Hey everybody, it's Mike, and today on Chip Damage, I'm going to try to answer a question. And that question is the Nintendo Switch Online Service, or NSO, worth it? And what do I mean by that? What do I mean worth it? I mean, is the service provided by Nintendo, the ability to play online and have access to a bunch of their classic retro games, worth the annual fee that they are asking? I ask this question as someone who not only loves video games, but collects video games, who loves trying out all types of games, new and retro, as well as someone who's very interested in gaming history and preservation. Is it worth it to me, and do I think I would recommend it to other people to pay that annual fee? And I bring this up because this is kind of an odd service, the NSO. Not in terms of individuality, both PlayStation and Microsoft offer similar services with like things like Microsoft Game Pass and PSN, obviously, where they provide you an online service with bonus extra games that you can play. But it's unique in Nintendo's case because they're kind of the last ones to join the party in this case. Obviously, past Nintendo systems have had downloadable games as well as online play for years and years, but this is the first time where they are tied together and asking for a fee for continued service. And after kind of not giving it the time of day for a number of years, I've recently upgraded to the top tier echelon, if you will, of NSO. And after kind of giving it a deep dive, testing the features, looking at the games available, I have some interesting takes, or at least I think I do. And I also have a lot of questions about it to other gamers, people in my audience in particular. I would love to just kind of take this time, use this video to discuss my experience with this service, what I think of it, what I think is not good, what I think is good, and also hear your comments and concerns about it as well, because that's what this channel is all about. Just kind of the discussion of where gaming is, where it's going, where we'd like to see it go. And I think the NSO is going to be something that's obviously sticking around throughout the rest of the Switch's lifetime into Nintendo's hopefully soon coming new console and beyond. I think this is kind of the solidification of their online plans. So without any further ado, let's get the YouTube stuff out of the way. If you like what you're about to see, as well as my prior videos, please like and subscribe and do all that great YouTube stuff. So let's begin. Let's get the basics out of the way. The Nintendo Online Service. What is it precisely? Well, there are a few tiers of it. For $20 a year, $20 in the United States, you get access to play your Nintendo Switch games online. There are a few exceptions that don't require the online service. I believe Fortnite and Rocket League don't require it. But if you want to play Smash Brothers and Mario Kart 8 online with other people, you must purchase this service. And with that service, you get access to these apps on your Switch that allow you to play a number of classic games. So you could think of it as, for someone like me who doesn't play a lot of online Switch games, the online is kind of a bonus that comes with the retro games. But to many people, the retro games are a bonus that come with the ability to play online. Doesn't really matter how you think about it, but that's what it is. Now, like I said, the base service is $20 a year, and that gives you access to about half the catalog of retro games, which we'll get into, and that's about it. There is also an upper echelon, an upper tier, where you can pay $50, and you get access to even more retro games, as well as expansions to some of Nintendo's biggest games, such as Mario Kart 8 or Animal Crossing New Horizons. You get the DLC kind of automatically when it's released if you're a member of this higher echelon. Now, like I said, have for a number of years had the lower echelon. I didn't really see the need to get the higher one, but I recently upgraded, and that's where this video all kind of spawned. Now, right out of the gate, let's get the elephant out of the room, or talk about the elephant in the room, I should say. The games that you have on this service are not yours. You are essentially renting them. If I were to end this service, I would no longer have access to the games I'm about to talk about. And that is the biggest caveat and the biggest talking point to many people who kind of knock this service. And you know what? I won't lie, it does suck. The Nintendo eShop is no longer a thing. It has been discontinued on all of Nintendo's prior consoles. And if you don't know what that is, essentially the eShops were online shops available on the Wii, the Wii U, and the 3DS, and to an extent the DS, where you could go online and just buy classic Nintendo and third-party games from Nintendo consoles. The Wii even allowed you to get like Sega Genesis games and like Neo Geo CD games. And you would own those games. Of course, they were digital, but they allowed you to keep those games even if you weren't online. They were yours to keep, and it was a great service. If you just wanted Mario 1, you could go and buy Mario 1. If you wanted Donkey Kong Country, you go and you can keep them. I still have them on my Wii and Wii U to this day. That no longer exists. And I do want to talk about that first. Essentially, you cannot individually buy, for the most part, any of the games in this service to keep. As you'll see as we go through the catalog in a little bit, let's say you wanted Mario 1. You cannot download the original Mario Brothers NES on the Switch to keep, which I find ridiculous and really fascinating. You've been able to do that since the Wii. If you want to play Mario 1, Mario Brothers NES, on the Switch, you must get this service, and that will allow you to play it. However, if you were to discontinue that service, you no longer could. It is tied to that service, which is just absurd. Strangely, I was talking with a friend recently. This is a console, the Switch, where you can buy Sonic the Hedgehog 3 times to keep, and of course I have, but you cannot buy Mario 1. You can play Sonic 1 and you can play the entire catalog of classic Sonic games on the recently released Sonic Origins collection. You can play it on the scroll over here. You could download Sonic 1 and 2 individually, these great versions on the Switch. These are download to keep. You can get the Sega Genesis collection that also has Sonic 1 and 2 on them. Yet again, that's a game you can buy and keep. And on the Genesis collection on the NSO, even though this isn't to keep, you can play Sonic 2 on the Genesis. There is more ways to buy and keep Sonic 1 and 2 than Mario 1 and 2 even on a Nintendo console. Yet again, I can buy to keep Sonic the Hedgehog Part 1 3 times, and there's no way for me to permanently own Mario 1 on the Switch. Bit bizarre, and that is something of a huge downside. It hurts gaming preservation in the sense that eventually this service will end. Nintendo does not keep their online services up forever. No one does. As we've seen with the Wii, Wii U, and 3DS, they have about a decade of life and then they shut down. But in those cases, as long as you have those games downloaded and you keep your hardware well, you'll keep those games. Not the case here. However, with that said, there are some really fantastic things about the NSO. This is not a bashing session. I kind of also want to mention that even though you cannot purchase these games individually, there are tons of classic games available for purchase on the Switch that aren't tied to the NSO. They are available in the regular eShop, the continuation. Even if they were released on other consoles as well, they're still widely available. If you want to play any of the classic Final Fantasy games which debuted on Nintendo consoles, you can buy that in the Final Fantasy 1 through 6 collection. You can get all the classic Street Fighters in the Street Fighter collection. There's various Mega Man collections, Castlevania collections. So not all of the retro shop games are like, gone forever and tied to the service. There's plenty of games that originally debuted and are most famous for Nintendo consoles available for purchase. However, the first party games are all available pretty much here. And that really stinks. And I know that's going to be the number one comment that I hear. You can't buy to own them. But once you get over that hump, once you understand that once you purchase this service, once you start paying for it, is it worth it? Is it a cool service to have if you're looking for a good catalog of games? Well, let's jump in and find out. So when you buy the app, let's start with the apps that you get when you do the lower tier purchase, the $20 tier purchase. And I should also say these purchases could be split up and made cheaper if you have a family plan. People could chip in to help pay for the yearly fee. However, I'm going to be strictly speaking price-wise as someone who pays for this myself. I think that's how a lot of people would do it or prefer to hear about it. So yes, for the $20 a year, you get access to 3 of the collections. You get the Nintendo NES collection, you get the Super Nintendo, and you get the Game Boy collection. So let's begin there. Let's begin with the OG, look through the catalog, and say, hey, what are we dealing with here? Now, obviously, the catalog is not as big as a full eShop. It's not like every NES games, but there's a good number, and it's added to regularly. I shouldn't say regularly, it's kind of intermittent, but they'll randomly throw some new games on all of the apps every now and then. So let's go through them quickly and talk about what are these worth it. I don't know all of the games here, guys. I just want to highlight some ones that I find interesting and I know are big hitters. You have the spin-off HAL game from Kirby, The Adventures of Lolo. That's a cool little game. Of course, you have Balloon Fight. You got to have like these stalwart NES games like Baseball, Blaster Master. You know, these are on every like NES collection possible. You have some imports, which I think is really cool. Also, if you also get some history on these games if you click them, like Devil World, which was recently released. I believe this is, like I said, a hidden gem that Miyamoto put out before Mario Brothers on NES. So there are some imports, like in the case of me as an American never having had a chance to play this. You have Dig Dug, you have the classic Donkey Kong games, which are cool. All these games, by the way, they come with a save feature as well as the ability to rewind play. Some of these games are pretty unforgiving, guys, so it's kind of a cool feature. You also have, like I said, more obscure imports. You have this River City game, Downtown Niketsu. Very special here, actually. Originally released in the West only on the Wii U is Earthbound Beginnings. Now, it breaks my heart that this isn't a game that you can buy to keep on the Switch. It is on the Wii U, so you can't really get it. So the only way, if you don't have this game to officially play Mother 1, as it were, Earthbound Beginnings, is to have it on here. However, I think that's fantastic that it was added. That game, it was a big deal that we finally got Mother 1 in the US. Not as big as Mother 3 would have been, but it's cool that it's there and that it's not relegated to the dustpan of history by being trapped on the Wii U. I love my Wii U, guys, but no one has one. So it's cool that it's on this big service and you could play it. You have some like random obscure games, like what is that? Boat Duel? Yeah, I don't know about that one. Like a lot of these are like first party, most of these are like first party gems, but then you just have like random stuff. You have your Excite Bikes, Ghosts and Goblins, one of the few games that I think is too hard to be fun. You also have these games tagged with this special ribbon. What this is essentially is like a modded or fully unlocked version of a game. Like it says right here, if you want like to just get to the end, stage 6 of Ghosts and Goblins, you're armed with rapid fire, easy to use dagger. It's basically like a modded version of the game that makes it easier or has everything unlocked. So if you just want to jump into it without playing the regular game, it's there. It's an odd thing. There's like multiple versions of Gradius here, which is like Gradius, you just come in stage 5 and maxed out. What's this other one? The second loop. Things are even tougher this second time around. So this is like a mod. They're like mods almost, really, which is an interesting thing. You have Ice Climber, which must be everywhere. Random Immortal. I don't know this one. Like I said, some of these are just bizarre. Journey to Silas. Okay, Sunsoft. Joy Mech Fight. That's a Nintendo one that I don't know. You have the classic Kid Icarus. That's a good one to have. Oh, and of course you're going to get Kirby, the Kirby Games Adventure. You got your classic Legend of Zelda, the original Mario Brothers, the NES version, which is interesting. I said you have like a couple versions of Metroid. You gotta have it. Oh, this is so good. This was a download on the 3DS. Mysterious Murasame Castle. Essentially, think of like a more Japanese action-packed Zelda, like OG Zelda. You have your classic Ninja Gaiden. Sadly, no Ninja Gaiden 2 or 3 on there, but fantastic game right there. You have, let's see, Star Tropics, which I'm so happy is there. You have all the Marios. Of course, your Mario Brothers 1, 2, Lost Levels, 3, multiple versions. Twin B, the shooter from Konami, which is interesting. It's on that collection, as there is a classic Konami collection. You have Wrecking Crew, Xevious, Yoshi, and of course, Zelda 2. So for the NES, I guess it's mostly the stalwarts. You have your Mario, your Kirby, your Zelda, and your must-have like Ice Climbers, Excite Bikes, NES games. It's basic, but yet again, to have this, for $20 a year, for this to only be a third of what you're getting, it's not bad, and the ability to just kind of pop in and sort them the way you want, and they each have save features and stuff like that. It's interesting. Could it be better? Maybe, but I think they have most of the stuff that you'd want to have on NES. Like I said, I'd like to have Ninja Gaiden 2 and 3. That would be kind of nice. But there's not too much else on here that you necessarily need to have that you can't get elsewhere. Like there's the Ninja Turtle games, but that's now been recently released in the Cowabunga collection. So what do you get from the Nintendo Online Service? You get a lot of NES first-party exclusives, which is really what you want. So let's move on. That's not bad. I'd give that like a B, overall in terms of the catalog. But the system that is nearest and dearest to my heart in terms of childhood memories is the Super Nintendo. Probably the Nintendo system I put the most time into as a kid. And this was a huge draw for me when I originally heard about this service. So starting at the top, You got a good number of titles. Yet again, a lot of random stuff like Bomboozle, Brawl Brothers, whatever. But then you have the classic Squaresoft slash Capcom made Breath of Fire games, which, as far as I know, have never been released on a straight up collection. I believe they're downloadable on like the old PS3, PSN. But these are good RPGs that should not have been forgotten, have not been re-released readily by Capcom. So it's nice that they're on this service. Due to the fact that a lot of Capcom games are not on this, like you have Ghosts and Goblins and such, but you don't have like Street Fighter 2 or like a lot of the Mega Mans because they want you to buy those Mega Man collections. You have the 2 Joe and Mac games, a couple Caveman games here. You have Demon's Crest, which is fantastic. This was downloadable on a multitude of Nintendo systems prior. This is one of the best and most overlooked NES platformers, if you want to call it, like action platformers. Yeah, it has a lot of slowdown, but fantastic sprites. Not enough people play this. Really glad that that's there. It's not like a hugely popular game. These alone were enough for me to get the service. I love Donkey Kong Country. They are my favorite Super Nintendo games, 1 and 2 in particular. Of course, they were downloadable on the Wii and the Wii U, but it's great to see them and have easy access to them on the Switch. Might also add that this is a really snappy service, right? Like the eShop games kind of loaded up kind of slow, and there were some problems. They're a little clunky with the save load read feature. These are pretty straightforward. So it's really great just to have Donkey Kong Country on there. Also, this is a good time for me to mention any of the games that are multiplayer on this service are online. So like we'll get to it, like F-Zero Multiplayer Racer. You can play that online if you have this service. It's the first time you can play Super Nintendo games legally online. Pretty sick. I mean, not going to do it a lot, but the novelty is neat. So of course you have Earthbound. You got to have Earthbound on every digital like Nintendo thing. I'm glad it's there. Earthworm Jim 2, which is interesting. Earthworm Jim 1 is on the Genesis collection, but 2 is here, even though I think Jim is more associated with the Sega. Earthworm Jim 2 had the benefit of having weapon switching on the Super Nintendo, so maybe that's why they put it here. But yeah, like F-Zero, you want to play it online, it's right there. Go for it. It's pretty sick. You got your classic Harvest Moon, Joe and Mac 2, Jelly Boy. You got your Kirby's. You got Kirby Superstar. What a gem. You got to play it. It's on everything. You can play this on a watch, I'm sure. But you got plenty of great Kirby games here, including like Kirby's Star Stacker, a little puzzle game like that never officially came here. You got Magical Drop 2, of course. Link to the Past has to be there. Everyone's favorite Mario Picross import. You have less, but still some cool imports. Panel Dipon, which you may know as like Pokemon Puzzle League. Like it's one of my favorite puzzle games. It's cool that you have your official version here imported. More Twin B, more of that Konami shooter. More like Psycho Dream. Like yet again, odd release this this shooter action game. Random stuff too, like Side Pocket, Billiards, Smash Tennis, Spanky's Quest. You of course have Star Fox, and uniquely Star Fox 2, the game that was never officially released until the release of the Super Nintendo Classic a few years ago. Made for the Super Nintendo, dropped at the last minute, but basically complete. Rumored for years to be done. Finally released physically on the Super Nintendo Classic. If you want the game physically, it's there. But those are pretty expensive, guys. So if you want to play Star Fox 2, it's really neat that it's on the online service. I will give it that. You have Earth Defense Force, but not the Earth Defense Force that most people are thinking about, where you're fighting different bugs. Different game, same name. You have Super Ghouls and Ghosts, which I think is my favorite of the original trilogy. This is interesting. You have Super Mario All-Stars, which essentially everyone knows is the SNES remakes of the classic NES games. But I thought it was a little disappointing that they didn't have Super Mario All-Stars Plus World, the later release that included Mario World on the collection. Of course, Mario World is right here on the collection, but at the same time, the Super Mario All-Stars Plus World has a unique version of Super Mario World. It's a little different. There's little nuances with Luigi in particular. So it would have been nice to have Super Mario All-Stars Plus World version, but it's not there. Hey, whatever. You still got Mario World. You have Super Mario Kart, which you can also play online. You have to have Mario World, right? And it looks great. I know they like these games, like they display really nicely. Mario World looks great. And right after Donkey Kong Country, my favorite Super Nintendo game, Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island. Now this is unique because this was never officially released on the eShop. This version of it, I should say. The version that was available on the Wii U was the Game Boy Advance version, which yes adds features, but the music and the palette is a little different, and I kind of prefer the Super Nintendo version in those aspects. So it's really great to just have Yoshi's Island. Doesn't get as much love as its predecessor, Mario World. I know it's only Mario World 2 here in the West, but still, I'm glad that it's here. You have to have Super Metroid. You have to have Super Punch-Out. You have a lot of puzzle games, more like Puyo Puyo or Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine or Kirby's Avalanche. You have Donald Trump playing soccer there with Super Soccer. And you have this Rob Liefeld-ass character on Hey Punk, Are You Tough Enough? And Wild Guns, which actually is really good as kind of like this light gun first-person shooter thing, where you, like robots and cowboys. And that does it for the Super Nintendo collection. Smaller, as you'll see, these collections get smaller as we go on. But this is a decent sized one. And, there's a lot of random junk on here. Like I said, I don't think anyone's going to be like, yeah, Bomboozle. But, you have the stalwarts. And I think that Super Nintendo games age a little bit better than NES games. And I think a lot of, there was more refinement. So, Donkey Kong Country, Earthbound, Super Mario World 1 and 2, Legend of Zelda, Link to the Past, those alone are some of the greatest games of all time. And I'm really glad to see that they're all available on the service. Yet again, you get these, the NES, and the next console for $20 a year. But we must move on. The third and final thing you would get in the $20 tier for the NSO is the Game Boy Collection, which was recently added. Originally, it was just NES and Super Nintendo, but they added a good amount of value by letting you play some Game Boy games. So this catalog's pretty small, but it's pretty neat. This is where I started kind of really paying attention to what the NSO was doing. You randomly have Alone in the Dark. They made an Alone in the Dark game on Game Boy Color in particular. Did not know that. Haven't played it yet, but it's a nice deep cut. You have A Blaster Master. You have A Burger Time. Sure, whatever. But this is an interesting one. This was recently added with Castlevania Legends. Now, on the recently, not so recently, but the Castlevania collection that Konami put out a few years ago, it included the first two Castlevania Game Boy games, Castlevania Legends. And their second collection, the Advance collection, had more portable games, the Game Boy Advance ones. Both did not include this, the third Castlevania game on the Game Boy, Castlevania Legends, which is not canon. It has been struck from the canon, if you care, by Koji Igarashi, kind of the series producer at the time. And it's kind of forgotten in a lot of ways, because of that. I think it's kind of looked upon as not one of the best games in the series. Like the Game Boy Castlevanias, are not fantastic. The second one, Belmont's Revenge, isn't bad. The Castlevania 2, it's called. But this one was one I was very interested in because there's no other digital re-release of it. Like I said, you were able to play the others in the collection. So it was very neat that they took the one Castlevania game on a Nintendo console that you could not buy in any of its multitude of collections and put it on the service. I played it a little bit. It's not the best, but it's really neat to play. I will eventually play through it because I played through all the Castlevania games. And it's really neat that I'm not going to have to hunt down a physical. If I don't want to own the game permanently, I can just play it here to kind of demo it, and it looks good on the TV. That was a unique addition because it's kind of overlooked. Like Castlevania is kind of cataloging all itself in these collections, like the double pack with Symphony of the Night and Rondo, the 8 games in the Anniversary Collection, and the 4 games in the Advanced Collection. But they overlooked Legends, so it's nice that it's there. You have the Game & Watch Gallery collections. These are neat little collections of just very simple games from Game & Watch put on there. It's cool to have. You have Gargoyle's Quest, which is the first in this series, the Gargoyle, the Red Armor series, a spin-off of Ghouls and Ghosts. I mentioned Demon Crest earlier. That is the third game in the series. There was Gargoyle's Quest and the two Demon's Crest game, or Gargoyle's Quest 2 and on NES, and then Demon Crest, which is Gargoyle's Quest 3, as it were, on Super Nintendo. But it all starts here. And this is a cool little, top-down game that, occasionally plays like a platformer. Very random that you play as the Red Armor, who's green on the cover because I didn't know what color he was back then. But yet again, this was available on the 3DS as a download. I really enjoyed this game. It's a good little Capcom gem. You have Kirby Tilt and Tumble, which as a kid I loved, and I can't believe it's here. It's essentially a rolling ball game where depending on how you hold the Switch or the controller, you have to tilt it actually to get Kirby to go to places. Really neat and novel. Very surprising that it's there. You have the original Kirby's Dream Land where he was white on the box because, yet again, I didn't know what color he was, like Red Armor, the artist who did it. Love it. Kirby's Dream Land 2. Link's Awakening DX, which is in my top 2 Zelda games, up there with Wind Waker. I love Link's Awakening. Now the remake on Switch is neat. I love it. But there's something about the quaint graphics of the original Game Boy one that still is near and dear to my heart. And I didn't play it too much as a kid. I played it only a couple years ago for the first time, and I really loved Link's Awakening on the Game Boy, and I'm glad it's there. But with that, we get the release of two of the Capcom Zelda made games, and that is the Oracle games, Ages and Seasons, which are great. And they were released on 3DS, but it's really great that you have the kind of trio of Zelda games on there, because this is a big selling point for this Game Boy service. And I'll say, like, these are some of the best games on the Game Boy, and I'm glad they're all there. You have Metroid 2, The Return of Samus, even with the remake on 3DS. It's still great to be able to play the original. You have the impossibly hard Pokemon trading card game. I had this game as a kid. Maybe I just suck at the card game, but this game always kicked my ass. But I love it. I'm glad that it's there. It's a weird thing that's like double licensed, like Nintendo, Wizards, whatever, but it's there. Then everyone was talking about how random this game is, a licensed game, Quest for Camelot. No one remembers this movie. No one played this game. I've heard it's not that good, but they just threw it on there. I guess it was just cheap to get. Then you have one of my favorite games on the console, Super Mario Land 2, 6 Golden Coins. One of the best 2D Marios, really imaginative, really interesting, really weird with its power-ups and its worlds. First appearance of Wario. This alone would have made it worth it for me. Love me Mario Land 6 Golden Coins. And of course, Tetris, the thing that sold Game Boy at first. Everyone loved it. It was one of the first imports into America from Russia during the Cold War, and kind of near the end of the Cold War. The original Tetris Game Boy is many people's favorites because of nostalgia, and it's a very simple but solid game. You gotta have it. And then Wario Land 3. We stopped getting Super Mario Land games, and they kind of converted to Wario Land games, and really love that's there. Hopefully the whole collection of Wario Land games will eventually kind of be available. But yeah, that's it for Game Boy. Only a mere, let's see, 4, 8, 12, 16, 18 games right now. This is the newest of the three that we were talking about, so the catalog hasn't expanded that much. But it's solid, Unfortunately, there's no Pokemon Red, Blue, or Yellow, or Gold and Silver even, counting Game Boy Color here. But that would be, like, you can't just... The amount of time you could put into those games and the way Pokemon kind of is, like, it's a second-party game, and it's like co-owned by Nintendo with the Pokemon Company and Game Freak and all that. Like, you don't put Pokemon games here. You make those purchasable games in their entirety. Like, so that is kind of a glaring omission, but it wouldn't really fit here in my eyes. But you have the Gargoyles Quest, you have the Zelda games, Mario and Metroid. It's solid. So yeah, guys, for $20 to get those three collections for the year, yeah, once you get over the hurdle that you can't keep them, but they're portable and you have easy access to them, and they're being added to, and they have cool features like save and rewind. Yeah, for sure. If you were to give $20, there's no other online service on console for $20, especially one that would give you a catalog of games. I think all in all, that's like 50, 60 games you would get access to, with a good majority of them being classics that stand the test of time. I would say if you're not willing to spend too much money, and you want to just play some good classic Nintendo games on the go or on your TV, and they just want them to work. You're not necessarily a physical collector, and you understand they'd be gone once you stop paying that $20. It's not a lot of money to most people. I'd say that service is definitely worth it to have Game Boy, Super Nintendo, and Nintendo games. May I add, this also, I believe that the cloud online save feature is also tied in to the Nintendo Online service, so keep that in mind, much like PlayStation. I'd have to double check that. But yes, I believe in order to cloud save some of your games, you would need to have the service as well. So with that in mind, with the online multiplayer and the online multiplayer of the classic games, yes, the $20 purchase is definitely worth it for the year. If you're a game connoisseur, if you love classic games, even if you only prefer physical, it's $20, guys, and you get to play all 3 Donkey Kong countries in Mario World. That's pretty sweet on the go, However, like I said, recently I upgraded to the other tier, the higher tier, the $50 a year tier. Now, that is the tier, like I said earlier, that adds the automatic DLC to some of their bigger first-party games, like Mario Kart 8. You get the tracks, or Animal Crossing, or Splatoon. Now, that is interesting. Like, would that just disappear? I'm assuming it would. You wouldn't have access to it if you stopped doing that service. However, I just separately purchased the DLCs that I want. They are permanently mine even before I got that service, and that's what I suggest you do. I would not, if I just wanted the DLC, I would just buy the Mario Kart 8 DLC. It's cheap and you get to keep it. But that is something to keep in mind if you don't want to do that. That with this $50 tier, you will be getting that DLC as well. But with that DLC, the main course we're going to be talking about is you get access to 3 more consoles in the classic space. The Nintendo 64, the Game Boy Advance, and incredibly oddly, the Sega Genesis. And we'll get to that. But let's start with Nintendo, the big boy, the most, I guess you could say the most powerful console, most advanced that you would have access to with this, and they draw for many a millennial, and that is the Nintendo 64 collection. Let's hop in, shall we? This was big. This was a big deal, guys. So let's go in. I just want to say right off the bat, you can separately purchase my favorite Nintendo 64 game on the Switch and everything else. That is the Turok games, Turok 1 and 2, and soon to be 3. That is purchasable on the Switch separately. It is not part of this collection. So let's begin, shall we? Banjo-Kazooie, licensed from Microsoft. Remember, Banjo and Kazooie are Microsoft characters now. They have a good deal with Nintendo because they're allowing Banjo-Kazooie and hopefully soon Tooie to be fully playable on the Switch. It just makes sense. You can download them on your Xbox, but and that's great. They look great, but it'd be wrong to have a Nintendo 64 collection without them. So I guess with that Smash Brothers deal, they let them get the ability to play Banjo. Dr. Mario, Excitebike 64, F-Zero X, play these online, and of course, many people's favorite game on the N64, GoldenEye, right there on the 64 collection. You could play this locally, and I remember I haven't played this version yet, but I know that there is some conflict because of the Xbox version, and one has online and one doesn't. I think this one is the one that has online. I'd have to double check it. I'm not the biggest GoldenEye fan, like I said. I'm a Turok boy. I'm right. But to many people, this was the game for N64 for years and years, and people still think it's good. But regardless of whether it's online or not, like I said, I'd have to double check. It does have local multiplayer, so you can get your 4-player action on in GoldenEye. Kirby and the Crystal Shards, kind of an underrated gem, 2.5D gem. And then you have the 2 games that, along with GoldenEye and Mario 64, kind of define the system. You have the 2 Zelda games, Majora's Mask and its predecessor, the legendary Ocarina of Time, which of course was downloadable on everything Nintendo's ever put out, and there's new versions of it on the 3DS. But the classic version in 64 is many people's favorite game on the console and of all time, so it's great to have easy access to them right there on the service. Also, I just want to know, GoldenEye, there's been other versions on other consoles, but this is the first time the N64 version has been playable on a Nintendo console, which is a big deal because the licensing on this thing is hell. With all the faces and the James Bond and all that. So it's cool that it's there. You have some classics like Mario Golf. Many people's most played Mario Kart 64. You have Mario Party 1 and 2, which is interesting because Mario Party 2 has been downloadable in the past, but it's been a while since we've been able to play Mario Party 1. The legend is because there's the mini game that has you spin the joysticks and people burn their hands, so they sent out those gloves. There was a big lawsuit on the N64, so Nintendo, of kids hurting their hands. So Nintendo sent out the glove to people who wanted to continue to play it. So it was kind of thought that Mario Party 1 would never be re-released, but hey, it's right there and fully playable with that game, if I'm not mistaken. And then you have Mario Party 3, first time that's been re-released. Mario Tennis, the beloved Paper Mario, which is very great that it's there. It looks fantastic too. Pilot Wings. Strangely, Pokemon Puzzle League, which is counterpart to Pokemon Puzzle Challenge, which is paneled upon. This one's an even weirder licensing thing because it's not like Nintendo's Pokemon. It's the anime Pokemon, specifically the world of the anime. So there's more licensing to do with that. But they got it, man. That's pretty cool. You have the beloved Pokemon Snap. Fun thing about Pokemon Snap, there are 63 Pokemon in Pokemon Snap. They missed it by 1 Pokemon. How are you going to have a Pokemon game on N64 and have 63 Pokemon available in it? Regardless, you have the 2 Pokemon stadiums, which I haven't had a chance to really try yet. It's got to be it just must be the base game. If you don't know, Pokemon Stadium allowed you to kind of bring your Pokemon from the Game Boy and battle them in 3D on the TV, which was novel at the time. Pokemon Stadium 1 and 2. So it's I guess just the base content that would be on Stadium 1 and 2. And don't get me wrong, I love the presentation. But you're missing a chance there that, if you have the Game Boy games on the service or whatever, you'd be able to transfer the data here. I think that'd be a huge loss if Nintendo never does that. You have a gem on the Switch that was luckily downloadable on the Wii U. The Wii U at the very least, Sin and Punishment, which is a like Star Fox-esque run and gun shooter, third person, that got a sequel on the Wii. I love this game to death. It never came to the States originally, so I'm really glad that it's available on this service. Of course, you have three of the biggest, earliest games on the N64. You have Star Fox 64, Mario 64, and the Wave Race. It's a little shady what they did with Mario 64 because it was originally available digitally to purchase as part of the Mario 3D All-Stars collection. But famously, I think this game is only available for purchase digitally for a year, and they're not producing any more physical copies. Don't worry, it sold 10 million units, guys, and there were plenty left over. So this is not a rare game. They made so many, this will probably never be rare, like hard to get unless people start scalping them. But they strangely, and I hate this practice, they delisted this game offline, so you can't download it, so you need a physical. And I think a big part of that is they want you to get this service, and a big part of the selling service would be the ability to play Mario 64. So strangely, you were able to buy one of the games on the service on the Switch, but you can no longer. But Mario 64 is there, and that's pretty cool. Then you have Winback, Winback's kind of a running joke on N64, but some people love it. And then you have Yoshi's Story, fun little game, nowhere near as good as Yoshi's Island, but still pretty damn fun. And that does it for your big N64 catalog. And it is growing, but you have the heavy hitters here yet again, the ones you have to have, your Mario 64, your Ocarina, your GoldenEye, your Banjo, and your Star Fox, and of course Wave Race. Like, yet again, now you're talking money. You're talking $50 a year, which is a little cheaper. Well, with Sony increasing their base tier to $80 a year, $70 a year, I forget, but increasing it nonetheless. It's comparable to price to the Xbox and Sony payment plan, lowest tier, but it's still cheaper than that, and you get these games plus the ones we're about to show off. I'd say this thing is starting to look pretty worth it. So the next console we're going to be looking at, the last Nintendo console, is the Game Boy Advance, which comes along with the $50 tier. Yet again, this is a small catalog, but there's some bangers in here that I was surprised about. Love the noises, love the startup noises, really do. You have I believe the first Fire Emblem that appeared in the US. This is not the first Fire Emblem. I think Fire Emblem came out in 87 or 88 originally, or early 90s. This is the first one released in the US. It's just called Fire Emblem. I forget its full title in Japan. I'm not a huge Fire Emblem guy, but it's cool to have. Kirby and the Amazing Mirror. You have Kuru-Ku, which I believe was never released in the US. It's like this little puzzle game you play as like a rotating platform. I think it was only a European release. You have the other Capcom-made Zelda game here, which I love, Minish Cap. Some of the most charming sprites, like great artwork. Nintendo Game Boy Advance sprites, some of the best in the biz. You have the Mario RPG, Superstar Saga, very beloved. Super Circuit, which looks wild on a full-blown TV, let me tell you. Metroid Fusion, no Zero Mission yet. I'm really waiting on Zero Mission, but it's coming. But Metroid Fusion is great. And then you have, oddly, the entire Super Mario Advance collection. So these games have like the craziest names in the world, like Super Mario Advance 4, Super Mario Brothers 3. So Mario Advance has Mario 2 and Arcade Mario. Mario Brothers Advance 2 has Mario World. Mario Advance 3 is Yoshi's Island, like I said, with bonus features. And Mario Advance 4 is Super Mario Brothers 3. So it's like bizarrely released. And yet again, this is another one. So you have three ways to play the classic Mario series. You have the NES collection, you have the All-Stars collection on the Super Nintendo app, and then you have the Advanced version, which are slightly enhanced and different on the Game Boy Advance collection. You play the original Mario games in a multitude of ways. And you have WarioWare Micro Mini games. I haven't played this yet. I really want to. I love the WarioWare games. And that's it. Just at the moment, 12 games. However, like I said, this is recently released along with Game Boy. The Game Boy and Game Boy Advance games are very recent additions to the service. And I actually do think they add a lot of value. Like Game Boy Advance is very beloved. And so, I mean, yeah, these are basically all just Nintendo first-party releases. But like with the Metroid Fusion, one of the most beloved Metroid games, the advanced version, which might be the first way that the newer generation after mine originally played these games. I think that's pretty great that they're all there. And Superstar Saga not getting enough love in the world. It's not bad. Yet again, 12. There's no bad game here. I'm not too familiar with Kuru-Kuru, and I haven't played Wario here, but I'm sure they're good. So, like, yet again, There's no fluff here. There's a lot of fluff in the Super Nintendo and NES. This is like kind of all killer, no filler. So that's pretty neat, but not much to talk about. And then let's talk about the bizarre addition to this service, the Sega Genesis or Mega Drive if you live in the not right part of the world. I'm kidding. I don't know. They both roll off the tongue. Like Sega Mega Drive sounds good, but Sega Genesis, it's like, love that. Also rolls off the tongue, regardless. Listen to my accent. I'm American. It's the Genesis to me. The Nintendo Wii allowed you to download Genesis games particularly, and of course collections of Sega games have been on Nintendo for years and years and years, but just odd that it's a console on this collection, and it's the only non-Nintendo console on this service, and it was famously the rival to the Super Nintendo, putting Nintendo down in their advertising. So it's kind of just neat that it's there, but I was a Sega kid mostly growing up, so I think this is neat, and some of these are real gems, guys. Let me tell you, if you're not familiar with some of these games, I'd love to kind of illuminate like why this is so cool. Alien Soldier. This was downloadable on the Wii. This was which was the first way you could play it in the U.S. I believe this was only released in Europe and Japan. This is a gem. I believe it was made by Treasure. Treasure. One of the best run and gun shooters on the system. Incredibly hard. You play as like this chicken man, but definitely something that's hard to come by in the U.S. I'm very glad is on the service. Give this a shot. Alien Storm. Elisa Dragoon. This is a game, another run and gun kind of like mythical that I played on the Genesis Mini for the first time. Great game. Altered Beast, which is on every Genesis collection ever because it's one of the first Genesis games. I think it was a launch title that came with the system. I'm not a fan of Altered Beast that much. I think it's overplayed. It's kind of like the Ice Climbers for me from the NES. Like it's on every collection. It's neat that it's there. It's got to be there, but I don't play it for fun. Beyond Oasis is a really good Zelda clone, I guess you could call. It's been on a number of collections. And then, yet again, very oddly, Castlevania Bloodlines. This game is available for purchase. One of the few games separately available for purchase on the Switch is part of the Castlevania collection. If you get the 8-game Castlevania Anniversary Collection, this is on there. So it's a little odd that it's highlighted here. However, Castlevania Bloodlines for many years was not re-released on the Wii or Wii U or what have you. But it was put on the Genesis Mini, on the Anniversary Collection, and here. And it's getting more spotlight because it was often thought of, due to online culture and due to the fact that it was a very late release on the Genesis, as like not one of the more better Castlevanias or inferior to Super Castlevania 4, the premier game on the Super Nintendo. However, like after playing it, I love Castlevania 4 to death. I actually prefer Bloodlines. I think Bloodlines has a bit more energy and is a bit more like instantly replayable. It's one of my favorite Castlevanias, classic Vanias, all up there with Rondo of Blood. Like Castlevania Bloodlines is fantastic. So if you never played it, like I said, it wasn't re-released as much as other Castlevanias. Definitely play Castlevania Bloodlines. It's one of the best. You have Columns, Sega's answer to Tetris, never one of my favorites, but it's got to be there. The beautiful Comic Zone that's in every collection, impossible to beat. Yet again, strangely, a lot of these, including this game is available for purchase in the Sega Genesis collection, the separate Sega Genesis collection. But it's cool that it's there. Contra Hardcore, yet again, available in the Contra collection that you can buy on the Switch. Very hard, very good. This game, however, Crusader of Senti, has never been re-released. And this is at least to my knowledge, it wasn't released, or it has been re-released often, or maybe I missed it on the Wii. However, this is one of the most valuable North American Genesis games. Google this one, guys. This is like, I've seen this go for $500 up to $1,000. Like, this game is incredibly sought after. It's essentially a Zelda clone, but it's a good one made by Atlas. And it was very late in the console's life, 95. The Saturn is like out, and no one played it, and it's one of the most sought after Genesis games. So it's very cool that if you don't want to emulate it and you don't want to pay $1,000 for it, that it's available here, and it's good. It's a good Zelda clone. And you have my beloved Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine, or Puyo Puyo. Love this game, played the hell out of it. Treasures Dynamite Heady. It's in a ton of collections that you can purchase separately, but it's cool that it's there. Earthworm Jim 1. Yet again, not a Sega-made title, but very heavily associated with Sega. Echo of the Dolphin, which I've always hated. I know it's like a Sega Genesis stalwart, but I've always hated Echo. However, Flicky, which I guess you could call a Sonic spin-off, but like I think the arcade version came out way before Sonic. Flicky, the bird that pops out of robots in Sonic, has his own game, guys, and it's great. It's one of the simplest games. They could have put this game on the Atari, but essentially he plays Flicky saving other birds from like these cats that chase you. I love Flicky, very addicting. You have Ghouls and Ghosts, the sequel to Ghosts and Goblins that came up before Super Ghouls and Ghosts. It's very good. I think the Super Nintendo version kind of trumps it. However, it's cool that it's there, that you can play the whole trilogy of Ghouls and Ghosts, Ghosts and Goblins right there. You have 2 of the Golden Axes, yet again available on the Sega Genesis collection. No Golden Axe 3, very odd. I mean, Golden Axe, yet again, it's in every Genesis collection, but no 3. Gunstar Heroes, Treasure's one of the most famous shooters. Everyone loves Gunstar Heroes. Very glad it's there. I'd love to see Gunstar Superheroes on the Game Boy Advance, its sequel. Kid Chameleon, a weird Genesis gem, yet again, tons of collections have it. Over 100 levels and 1,850 screens. Screens? Who counts the screens? Whatever. Landstalker, Light Crusader, Mega Man: The Wily Wars. Yet again, never officially released in the United States. Originally a Sega Channel, if you know what that is, exclusive. It was released on the Genesis collection, the Genesis Mini in the United States. Finally, that was a purchasing point. The Genesis Mini had a ton of hard-to-get Genesis games that ended up on this service for the most part. Mega Man: The Wily Wars is a Genesis remake of Mega Man 1, 2, and 3. Some people don't prefer them as much, but it's very cool that it's there. Capcom did not have a huge amount of Killers exclusives on the Genesis, so it's cool to see that, if you want to call it an exclusive. Musha, oh my god, internet fame this game has garnered in certain corners. My boy Keith Apicary loves this game. Musha is a shooter, a scrolling shooter, a shoot 'em up, if you will, that has like weird, like Japanese, a weird Japanese classical aesthetic. Like a lot of like the first level, you fight a Japanese castle that moves, that's covered in guns. eBay this one, guys. It's like $1,000 game, complete in box. I don't have this. This game is too expensive, but it's awesome. It's like a really good shoot 'em up, shmup. Musha. Never even realized it was an acronym. Metallic Uniframe Super Hybrid Armor. What a mouthful. Play this, guys. It is impossible to get physically. I guess you can emulate, but if you want an official means to play it, if you want to have it on the go, this is one of the best reasons to have the Genesis collection added to the service. Musha. You have Phantasy Star 4, classic RPG. Pulseman. You have Revenge of Shinobi, classic Restar, Sonic Team, Gem, Shining Force 1 and 2, you know, Genesis classic, Shinobi 3, love it. Only Sonic 2, I mean, you'd think Sonic 1 would be on there. I guess Sonic 2 is more loved than Sonic 1, and Sonic 3 has like the music issues, whatever, so they just have Sonic 2. However, like I said, there are 4 ways to play Sonic 2 on here. Get the Origins, the Genesis collection, and download it individually. They're better versions than this, but it's cool that it's here. You have the Impossible Sonic Spinball. You have Space Harrier 2, love it. You have Street Fighter 2, and this is interesting, Special Champion Edition, the Genesis version. I'm just glad that's there, because even though you have the Street Fighter collection here, these are the arcade versions, which are different than these versions. There were 2 Street Fighter games on Genesis. There was Super Street Fighter, which added characters, and then this original Championship Edition, so it's all janky, not as good, but it's like an interesting bit of history that I'm glad it's there. You just have Streets of Rage 2, which is definitely the fan favorite. I mean, you can get them elsewhere. It's weird Streets of Rage 1 or 3 are there, but I guess if you were to only have one, most people have played and loved 2. It is better than 1. 3, it's up in the air, but it's more beloved. You have Genesis Strider, which is way better than NES Strider. And even though Strider, like, why does he look like Kirk Douglas on the cover? That's so weird. Like, you know, the cover is legendarily bad. However, Strider of Marvel vs. Capcom fame, one of the best games on the Genesis. Up in my top 3. Love it to death. Definitely play this. You have Super Fantasy Zone for the Genesis, a classic. Sword of Vermilion. This game shows up in every collection too. I forget how that is. Target Earth. You have Thunder Force. Toe Jam and Earl. A lot of people have good nostalgia of this game, but when you go back and play it, it's a little rough, but it's cool that it's there. Why is this here? Virtual Fighter 2 Genesis Edition. If it was the Saturn or arcade version, I get it, but Virtual Fighter 2 on Genesis is legendarily bad. There is no Virtual Fighter 1 on Genesis. It's only on 32X. They turned a 3D game into like a 2D sprite fighter that's not good, but it is history, so I'm glad it's there. And then Zero Wing, which to my knowledge has not been re-released too much throughout time. This is the game with the early memes, the origin of the early meme, like all your base are belong to us. Zero Wing, yet again, a side-scrolling shooter. So that's cool that it's there. And now that I look at it, guys, the Genesis collection is larger, and I mean, for bang for your buck, like classics that are like expensive, uh, the best of the $50 tier collections over the Game Boy Advance and N64. I mean, obviously the N64 are more advanced, but some of these games are like super rare and awesome. Like these are a lot of bangers. I can't say it's all killer no filler, as I'm not familiar with every single game on this collection. But they took some of the best, like Castlevania Bloodlines and Musha and Crusaders Ascenti. This, if you're a Genesis person and you don't mind not owning these games, you just want to play them quickly and easily, pretty great collection, actually. I think it's better than a lot of Mega Drive collections have been over the years, even though it's smaller. Like, damn. I would love to see the rest of the Sonics kind of show up on there. But even, you know, in the rest of the Streets of Rages. But, and where's Vector Man? But you can get those separately for purchase in the Genesis collection, like I said. And that does it, guys. Before I, yeah, this Genesis collection right here is a majority of those games, and you get to keep them, but it is missing things like Musha, which make it pretty worth it. And that does it, guys. That does it for the the six apps, if you will, collections on the Nintendo Switch. If you decide to purchase the $50 tier, so like with the 20, do I think the $50 tier is worth it? Well, honestly, at first I didn't think so when it first launched. But with the addition of the Game Boy Advance games, the DLC I honestly doesn't factor into me personally. Maybe to some people it will, because like of the games they added content to, it's only Mario Kart 8, which is $25 for like 48 courses. So I just bought that anyway before getting the service. So I don't really factor that in. What I'm really looking at is, are the collection of games good enough for a game connoisseur to really be interested in? And honestly, I'd say yes. For $50, I didn't add those all up, guys, but you're looking at over 100 games right there. Some filler for sure, but some gems, and it's just kind of cool for me personally. To be able to pop on my Switch, which boots up quick, and to be able to quickly, if I'm sitting in the doctor's office or getting my oil changed, play a number of these classic titles. Yes, I collect video games and I prefer digital. I prefer physical over digital media. And yes, if I do get digital, I really want to keep that media if I'm not paying the service. But I'm going in understanding that I'm paying a pretty light fee. I mean, $50 for a year is not a ton of money for what you're getting to have very quick access. Like, I don't need to bring out my old consoles, or even if with the Wii and Wii U, I don't need to boot them up or take them out of storage, and they do load kind of slowly. I have my Switch hooked up all the time because it is the more modern console. I have quick access to a number of games, and I also look at it in a different way. If I really love a bunch of one of these games, I can demo it, like if I've never tried it, and then I can go out and buy the physical on original hardware, and I feel slightly less bad about it. Should these games be purchasable on the Switch digitally, though, permanently? Absolutely. There's no defending that this collection of games is smaller than the prior eShops, especially on the Wii. It's not as expansive, and you got to keep those games. However, for $50, I must emphasize this a year, to have access to 6 consoles worth of classic games on the go, with the knowledge that I can't keep them forever, I think it's a pretty good service, guys, and I would recommend it. Let's say you're not a collector, you just want to play some classic games. Some of them are pretty expensive. You don't care that you won't keep them for 100 years. Obviously, most people who watch this channel do, but if you just want to quickly play Donkey Kong Country, drop the $20 and you get to have all 3 of them for a year, and maybe you'll find some cool games that you didn't play on that console. Right now, if I wanted to play Musha, Mario, and then Mario 64, and then Streets of Rage 2, then Donkey Kong Country, then Yoshi's Island, then Ice Climbers, for whatever reason, I can quickly do that on the go with save states, and they look pretty damn good, both in HD on my television here or on the Switch. So yeah, I have to say they finally cracked me. At first, when it was just like NES and Super Nintendo, there was only a dozen games on each. It was a little bit of a tougher sell. And then when they upgraded to 50 and it was just N64 and Genesis and the catalogs were a little smaller, tough sell. But with 6 consoles well represented and growing, might I add, I'd say that it's a pretty good service if you're hesitating on it. And I think this is the way it's going to be going forward. Now, unfortunately, yes, I cannot buy Mario 1, but there's tons of classic games that I can buy. And with the Switch's ridiculous success, I think these services will go on for a very long time before they're discontinued, as well as eventually probably there's going to be anniversary releases of games like Super Mario, Zelda, and Metroid that you can permanently keep. Maybe they'll go this route of Mario 3D collection and not be available forever, but I'm sure they'll be purchasable permanently on some future Nintendo console, if not the Switch itself. So yeah, guys, should you spend the $20 or $50 on the Nintendo Online service if you're interested in the United States? I'd say definitely go for it if you're an enthusiast for video games. Like I said, there's nothing we can do. There's no putting the toothpaste back in the bottle with the ability to not purchase them. We can scream, we can comment. Maybe that'll do something in the future. But for the meantime, show them that there is support for classic games by playing these. They're really cool collections. I have a lot of fun with them, even if they'll disappear. So yeah, I think right after this video, guys, I'm gonna go and play like five or six of these games quickly in succession, because that's a cool feature that it allows you to do. Jump consoles and generations quickly while on the go. And that's pretty valuable. I think that's worth at least $20 to $50 a year. So I know this has been a unique video, guys. This isn't usually something that I talk about, kind of like, is this worth it, and going through things like this. But I had a lot of fun doing this. Even now, like, I've been talking for God knows how long, but I would love to do things like this more. If you're interested in hearing my thoughts on things like this, going through game catalogs, is it worth it? I think as a collector and someone who loves retro, modern, and everything in between games, like I don't really have a genre that I won't play. I would love to do more videos like this. So please let me know if you'd like to hear more. Please comment below. This is why I'm doing this. What do you think? What would you like to see on this service? What would you like changed? I know we should be able to purchase them individually, guys. So, you can leave that comment if you want, but I already know. But like, what do you think of this? I'd love to hear it, and I'll get back to your comments as soon as I'm able. Thank you for commenting on all the prior videos that I've done. I really love reading them. And like I said, even if I don't have the time to respond adequately enough, I'm seeing them. I love it. I love the conversation. That's what I want this channel to be. A fun and safe place for just people who don't discriminate against games, who love all the consoles and PC and all the genres. Just, shoot the shit and have a good time. So, without me blowing any more of my voice, ruining my voice, I would just love to say thank you for watching, especially if you stick to the end of the video. My name is Mike. This has been Chip Damage, and please take care of yourself.